There is nothing in the world that gives human beings more pleasure and joy than to fall in love and to get married. Isn't that true? In fact, we make marriage to be the most important act we'll ever do. We will invite family and friends to watch us tie the knot. You don't invite family and friends to watch you sign an agreement to buy a car. No. As important a car is, it doesn't even compare to falling in love and getting married. And why do we get married? Because we want to. It is something that love drives us to. We want to get married. And so marriage is this beautiful institution that gives us such joy and pleasure, security, and a place to have children and raise them in a secure environment. Well, not only can marriage be the most blissful experience, it can also be the most tormenting, destructive, damning experience you could ever have. Let's face it, for some people, marriage did not turn out to be the bliss that they were hoping for. It's turned out to be a disaster. And with that, there's a hope that people have of getting a divorce and getting out of this terrible marriage. So this is where we come to Matthew 19, where the Pharisees understand from Jesus that he doesn't believe you can just get a divorce from your spouse just like that. There has to be grounds for it. And Jesus laid out the grounds that if you get a divorce from your wife, except if she commits fornication, that is, if she breaks the marriage covenant first, you're free to get a divorce. But if she doesn't, you can't divorce just because she burns the toast, just because she gets fat, just because she gets old. No. That is not a grounds. Or that you meet someone that is far better than your wife. No, you can't get a divorce for that reason. And the Pharisees got upset at that because they were getting divorces like ordinary people would. They didn't keep their marriage vows. But Jesus is saying that the Creator made us to be married for life. In other words, Jesus taught that marriage was a covenant, not an agreement or a contract. See, Malachi chapter 2 talks about marriage as a covenant. Proverbs 2, Solomon writes that marriage is a covenant. And what is a covenant? A covenant is a solemn agreement that lasts a lifetime. In fact, that's the difference between contracts and covenants. A covenant, you don't end. Contracts can have a duration for, let's say, 5 years. You buy a car, you're going to pay your monthly payments. But a covenant, you're in it for life. And the Pharisees didn't want to believe that. And so they wanted to know, why then did Moses command us to give our wives a certificate of divorce? And Jesus said, he permitted you. He didn't command you, but he permitted you because he knew your hearts were hard. He knew you wanted it that way, so he tried to find us a way to provide for both the one who's divorced and to give an opportunity for the one who wants out. But Jesus said Moses did it because your hearts were hard. But this was not the way it was from the beginning. So after Jesus gets into this debate with the Pharisees walk out. The disciples are left hearing this debate. They come to the Lord and said, Lord, if this is a situation between a husband and wife, it's better not to marry. In us, we don't want to flip the coin and find out we got a terrible marriage that we have to keep for the rest of our lives. We don't want to take that risk. We want to be able to free to get out. And what did Jesus reply to them? He said, not everyone can accept what you're saying about not getting married, except those whom God has called. And if you can accept it and not get married, and you can still be happy and not be married, then do it. But here's the fact. Most people can't be single and happy at the same time, at least not a lifetime. And so because of it, we know from studies and surveys that married people, listen to me, married people live longer, are better financially, and generally are happier than single people. Should that surprise us? No, it shouldn't. But how are we going to be happy in marriage? I want to give you one thing in this video, something that Jesus taught, and that's this. If you want to be happy, then take your commitment to your marriage seriously. You can't look at getting married as something that if it's a disaster and you don't like it, that you can get out. You can't get out unless your married partner commits some sort of sexual immorality, because marriage is the joining of one flesh. So that's what's unique about your marriage. compared to your friendships with others. You are one flesh. And being one flesh, only if the other partner breaks the one flesh union with sexual misconduct, only then can you be free to get out. But you can't get out under other conditions. So because of it, you have to make a decision that when you get married, it's going to be a lifetime. You're not going to get out. Because the moment you approach marriage and you say to yourself, if it doesn't work out, I can always get out of it, then you know what you'll do? You're going to make yourself miserable in your marriage because you're always looking for the way out. So you're going to make yourself miserable. You're going to fight more. You're going to argue more. You're going to hate each other more. What are you doing? You're doing this because somehow, subconsciously, you want to make yourself miserable to justify you breaking the covenant. That's why Malachi says to the men, guard your heart so that you don't break covenant with the wife of your youth. So you got to guard your heart. That's what Jesus is saying. You got to stop from having a hard heart. And when you make a decision that you're going to stay in your marriage for life, God will give you the grace to do it, and He'll give you happiness. And then when you realize you're going to be together for life, you don't want to be miserable, do you? So if you don't want to be miserable, they don't want to be miserable, and you're going to be in it for life, then guess what you do? You find the resources in you to make yourself happy in this marriage. You find a way to be happy. They've interviewed couples that have been married for a long time, and they asked them, what's the secret? What has come out from those interviews is this one thing. These couples were committed. They had the same problems. They had the same difficulties. They went through the same problems as those who got divorces. But they were committed. And friend, when you are committed, and this is what Jesus is teaching us, we have to be committed in our marriage. And if we're committed, we're going to be happy. But if we're not committed, we're going to make ourselves miserable. And getting a divorce and getting remarried to someone else won't solve the problems. I'll prove it to you. 40% of all first-time marriages end in divorce. First-time marriages, 40%. But are you ready for this? 60% of second marriages end in divorce. Oh, evidently, they didn't find the grass is greener on the other side. Because what's the problem? The people who are getting remarried often have not found within themselves commitment. And what I'm saying is, Jesus said you must be committed for life until death do you part. And when you live this way and are committed to follow the teachings of Christ, can I tell you, you're going to be happy and married.